The first habit of a highly effective Agile team is to be proactive. So as an example, it's often the case that management will constantly change priorities or there's outside interference. So the team can either complain or they can choose to be proactive, such as lowering the priorities of certain work items. They can abort an iteration, or they can explain the consequences to management of changing its priorities and what it's going to have, the effect that it will be on the release. The second habit of highly effective Agile teams is to begin with the end in mind. And that means that we envision what the product is going to be before we start developing things. So when things are created, they're created twice. Once in our minds is that we create a mental picture of what we're creating, and then we actually create it in the physical world. We actually create working code. So this habit is about what are the things that we need to do for people to envision those things in their mind, such as creating a product vision and a product roadmap are some examples. The third habit of highly effective Agile teams is to put first things first. So that is about managing your time, and there are a lot of things which are urgent and important. There are things which are not important but are urgent. And so what we need to do is focus on the things which are important and not urgent. There are crises, there are phone calls, there's email, and these aren't the important things that teams should be focusing on. So if we can prevent crises from happening, then we can spend our time on more important things. So we need to figure out how to spend time on things that are going to produce value, like planning and preparation and creating plans, creating code, refactoring code. Those are the types of activities which make a team highly effective. The fourth habit of highly effective teams is to think win-win. That means when you win, I win. If I win, you win. And if neither of us can come to agreement, we say no deal. And the reason that's important is often we're working with our stakeholders and we need to make trade-off decisions. So, for example, we may need to trade off scope and when we deliver the release. And so if the business wins on the additional scope, but they don't give the team enough time to test, then the team loses. It needs to be a mutually beneficial relationship. The fifth habit of highly effective teams is to first seek to understand, then to be understood, which exactly is the backwards of how most people think. Normally, we are trying to be understood before we try to understand the other person. And obviously this would cause a disconnect between an Agile team and then the business. For example, when we're doing user stories, you want to understand what the customer is really looking to do before you try to impose your thinking upon them. And an example of this was one of our customers wanted to add a new tab to their database. And what we really found out was that their backup process was slow. And so what they really wanted was to be able to speed the backup. And they found if they dropped the indexes, that the backup would be much faster. So if we had first sought to understand, then to be understood, we would have gotten the requirement up front first without having to do a lot of rework. So the sixth habit of highly effective teams is to synergize. And this is all about teamwork. In Agile, teamwork and collaboration are really the heart of being effective. And some of the ways that teams synergize is by having a cross-disciplinary team, having business analysts, having developers, having architects all work together. And as a team, they are stronger than each individual. The seventh habit of highly effective teams is to sharpen the saw. And this is about renewing ourselves. It's about renewing our spirit, our mental being, our physical being. So some of the ways that Agile teams do this is by performing retrospectives and looking to improve what we do as individuals and what we do as a team. Also, working at a sustainable pace helps the team renew themselves, be creative, and be able to give the best. And that makes for the most effective teams. In summary, the first habit of a highly effective Agile team is to be proactive. The second habit of highly effective Agile teams is to begin with the end in mind. The third habit of highly effective Agile teams is to put first things first. The fourth habit is to think win-win. The fifth habit of highly effective teams, first seek to understand before trying to be understood. The sixth habit of highly effective teams is to synergize. The seventh habit of highly effective teams is to sharpen the saw.